to another episode of The Amanda Hill Show. Hi everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Welcome to this space. It's beautiful to be here with you. As I press record, it's just gone 1:11. So beautiful timing to tune in with you. Today is a bit of a different episode. We haven't done this before. It's a Q&A. I asked my community on Instagram if they would like to submit some questions to be answered for this episode. So those of you who submitted, I'm going to be answering your questions today, and I really thank you all for taking the time to do that. I will get started in a sec with our listener shout out, but I came across this quote this morning. I posted it on Instagram, but I feel like I really want to read it out today. It resonated so deeply for me, and I'm sure that it will for you as well. The reason I want to read it out is I feel like there's something really nice about hearing the words and hearing the vibration, as well as when we read things. Okay, so this quote is from Hera Morgan, and she said, "There is a depth to this Leo moon. You'll hear a lot of people saying it's your time to shine, but we aren't shining to be seen. We aren't shining from our ego. We are shining from our soul. And when we shine from our soul, we can't help but be seen for the radiant beings that we are." Let's breathe that in for a moment. Just let that settle. So nice. So, the listener shout out, this is my opportunity to honor someone from my community who has taken the time to leave a review of the Amanda Hill Show. So this shout out goes to the beautiful Ellen, and she said, "This podcast has given me so much soul goodness. It's like Amanda and her guests are speaking to me every single episode. I'm taking away golden nuggets and telling Siri to make notes so I can remember them. Thank you for sharing your creative gifts with me." Thank you, Ellen. It's beautiful to have you here. And turns out I am speaking straight to you today as well, because you have submitted a great question that I've answered in today's ep. So if you are a regular listener and haven't already, I would so appreciate you leaving your rating and review if you listen on an iPhone and the Apple Podcasts app. And it could be me reading your review next ep. And I'm so grateful for your support for the show. It allows the podcast to have more reach and to get into more ears and hearts. So really appreciate that. Okay, so let's get started with our questions. First of all, I'm just getting it up on my computer. So this comes from Christina. And the question is, what is a book that changed you? I love this question, and unfortunately I was not able to answer with one. So I've chosen three in three different areas that really had a big impact on me. So first of all, and this is on a creative level, was Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. You probably would have heard me speak about it. I think this book it was quite astronomical really, it broadened my perspective about what creativity is and helped me to see how creative I am. And I think Elizabeth Gilbert just knows how to speak to the creative process so well, and the challenges and fears that creatives come up against just make you feel as though you're not alone and that you have some tools to work through that. And because I grew up never really identifying as creative, because I wasn't creative in a traditional sense of that I didn't really play music. I mean, I dabbled in things, but I wasn't overly artistic. So I didn't identify as being creative, but I have now discovered that my gifts are in other areas as well as those areas as well, because it's just that we're all creative. Anyway, read the book. She explains it much better than me. She's absolutely amazing. So I'm always recommending that book to just broaden the scope of creativity and really tap into that creative energy and how it wants to move through you at any point in time. The next one, and this is in the realm of femininity, relationships, sacred union. This really changed the game for me around how I wanted to relate to myself as a sexual and sensual being, and how I wanted to be in relationship with a man, like what I wanted to represent in my femininity, basically. And just so much more on so many levels. It's one I go back to all the time to just open a page and to just see what the message is. And this book's a real visceral, like tangible experience as you read it, because it's written as poetry almost. It's very felt. It's very much a vibrational book. So this is Dear Lover by David Dieter. I'll pop all these in the show notes as well in case you want to check it out. And then the last one, I can't miss this one out. And this is all about menstrual cycle awareness, self-care, flowing with my own unique rhythm. I just can't leave out Adore Your Cycle by Claire Baker. It's an ebook. And there's no surprises there, but this book just changed the way that I lived my life, and has allowed me over the last few years to really live in my own rhythm and learn how to take care of myself at all different stages and so on and so forth. I feel like this was such a long answer of like, what is a book that changed you? But there's one other thing I want to just add in here. It's of my belief that books find us at the perfect moment, and books resonate with us. And I think it's really important to follow the feeling. So if you haven't heard of, some of you will have read all of those books, right? And if you haven't heard of any of them, but there was one that just kind of was singing to you then, like follow that. The way I want to explain this is there's a book called The Red Tent, and it's kind of like a Bible with menstrual cycle awareness, right? And when I started getting into the menstrual cycle awareness, I would sort of hear it pop up here and there. People would say, oh, have you read The Red Tent? And the book just hadn't come into my life yet. And I know some of you really know what I'm saying here. It's like when we feel that pull, or it's just like we're in a bookshop and it just pops up there and we're like, oh, this is the moment when I'm meant to get it, and we just really feel it. I hadn't had that moment yet. And my ego was like, man, you just go and buy it and read it. Like everyone keeps asking you, not everyone, but you know what I mean? It's just kind of going around, and our ego would just like to read every book straight away. But I think it's a really beautiful thing when we wait for the right timing. And that might be that we go, oh my gosh, I feel this strong connection to read this book. I need to go and order it off Amazon right now. But we really feel it. And I think it's just, a beautiful way for books to come into our life. And so, funny story, like, I think it was 3 weeks ago, I was at my mum and dad's and I was spending the afternoon there and all my family were busy and I actually had the space to just sit by the fire. And I said to Mum, I'm going to go pick a book. So I went to her bookshelf and what was sitting there was the Red 10 and my jaw dropped to the floor. I said, Mum, like, how long have you had this book? What is this book doing here? And she said, I think my friend lent it to me ages ago. I haven't read it yet. You can read it if you want. And I just had that feeling, and I guess the prelude to that was that, I don't know, my mum and I have been doing some beautiful healing of late, and the Red 10, a lot of what's in that book is like the generational lines and what's passed down through women. So as I was sitting there reading it, I was just like, this is on, like, this is the time for me to read this book. And I wouldn't have been ready for it 3 years ago when my ego wanted me to read it. So just a little sideline about books. But yeah, they have a beautiful vibration and we know when's the right timing for them to come into our life. So let me know if any of those books come in or if they're your favorites as well, or what book's your favorite. I'm really interested to hear. All right, let's get to the next question. I think that question took me about 10 minutes to answer, so I'm going to work on my pace here. But it was a great question, Christina. Thank you. All right, next one. So this is from Ellen. So she's written, I want to know more about your sacred/sexual womb awakening. Where, what, how did you work with your sexual self or side? Okay, so I think I need to start this story at my yoga teacher training, which was, you've asked specifically when, so, my memory. When was that? 2015. So start of 2015, I did my yoga teacher training, and if anyone's done their yoga teacher training will know this. If something needs to come up for healing, it's probably going to come up during your yoga teacher training while you're spending 5 to 6 hours a day in introspection. So there was lots of different healing aspects for me during my yoga teacher training, but one that definitely came up as well was that I had some sexual healing to do. I had some healing to do around past experiences, and this was quite confronting for me at the time. How I went about it, the good thing was that it was such a supportive environment. So I was in touch with my yoga teachers and with the beautiful friends I'd made. And the next step I took was when I got home, I actually started seeing a psychologist to start to work through and create some healing in the sacral chakra, if you're looking at chakras. And this was amazing. This was really deep, powerful work. And then it was later that year, I was just piecing this together when I was looking at your question, that I came off the contraceptive pill. And I actually think this was, in retrospection, when I look back, I didn't realize at the time, but when I look back, I know that this was also pivotal, because I feel like, for me personally, I'm only speaking from my experience, that whilst I was on the pill, it was like my sexual energy was very similar, like month to month. There wasn't much fluctuation. And when I came off the pill, as my body started to find its own rhythm, I felt like my sexual energy started to have these peaks and these ebbs and these flows. And I was just feeling almost more color around that. It was like, I know some of you are understanding why I'm saying this, but it's just like, I was like really feeling that sexual drive, like, around my ovulation. And I was feeling this wildness around premenstrual. It's sort of what Claire and I were talking about when I interviewed her. I think it was episode 19, if you haven't listened to that one. We speak about sex at different times in the cycle. But yeah, that's only in retrospection did I realize that really was part of this journey as well, was feeling less linear in my sexual energy and actually really feeling it come in stronger. I also worked with a Reiki healer around that sacral energy at this time too. And then I think the big thing here was that I signed up for, so this was early in the year after, so 2016, I started going really deep into this work, and I did conscious sexual dance classes and tantra workshops, and I was reading books about tantra and watching YouTube. When you just get enthralled, I was like, this is like this whole new world. And it was all of them working together, but I was definitely releasing sexual shame and embracing my sexual energy, both within myself, so exploring sex for myself, and with a partner as well. And I felt like both of them took on this whole new dimension. And I was sort of exploring, those different flavors to my sexual energy, different archetypes. And I think in particular, the wild woman archetype was a big reclaiming for me, that energy of like, I don't give a fuck, like, that real like untamed woman was really, really empowering for me to tap into. And I was having so much fun with it and experiencing so much healing. And what I've noticed when chatting to friends about this is that it seems for some people, it's like what comes first, the chicken or the egg, in terms of some people will be doing this menstrual cycle awareness work, and then the sexual work, like the reclaiming, will come in almost as a gateway to that. And then for others, the sexual work will come in first, and then they'll be like, it's all in a similar area, like the womb. So then they'll be tapping into the menstrual cycle awareness work as well. And, for others, completely outside of those spectrums. But they definitely both seem to feed into each other. So I guess if you've dived into one, maybe it's time to open into the other. And I would just be recommending here to follow the yellow brick road as such, as to where you're curious, whether that's a book or a workshop or doing healing work with a practitioner or a psychologist, a professional. Whatever it is, you'll know what's right for you. But I do recommend, particularly if you have, I'm not saying you do, but I just want to mention here for those listening who do have any sort of trauma in that area, that it is really important to work with someone you trust and to seek support as you navigate that. And that will feel really grounded and supported for you. So I'll put some resources and books in the show notes. But I'd also link back here to Dear Lover by David Dieter. It's a beautiful place to dive into. And thanks for the great question. All right, here's another one from Christina. I'm just going to take a tea break. I've got my lemon and ginger tea here. Loving the questions. Okay, so the question is from Christina, how do I convince my sister to try yoga? Now this one, it does bring me a little chuckle. I feel ya. And of course I've got multiple answers to this. Firstly, if she is open to it, if she's expressed interest, offer to go to a class with her. So ask the studio, if you're already going to a studio, ask them which class will be best for a beginner, or even try out the class first to make sure it will be suitable, because the first class leaves an impression. So if I had a penny for the amount of people who have said to me, oh, I tried yoga once, but I didn't really like it. And that's absolutely fine, because some people don't like it, right? But for others, they just haven't been to a class or haven't been with a teacher that they really, or the studio, the space as well, they haven't been to one that they really resonate with. It's like anything, you have to really jam with the teacher. You know, it has to feel the click. So it's really important to try, a few different classes. But if you can almost do some research as such and try out a class and go, oh yeah, I think she might like this. It's important that it's not going to be, something like Bikram, which is the heated yoga. It's like 40 degrees straight up, something that could leave a scar if she's not into that. Like, try to gently, introduce. And on that note, for some people, going to a studio can be quite intimidating, and that can make them feel quite anxious. So they might prefer to do yoga in the comfort of their own home to start with. So I have a class up on YouTube. I'll put it in the show notes. I also know Yoga with Adrienne on YouTube is very popular. I've got a lot of friends who love Adrienne. So again, I'll put that in the show notes. But that can be a great place to start. Lastly, this is a really important point. Yoga is not for everyone, and pushing things on others is the fastest way to turn them off. I have learned that time and time again with family and friends. So it comes from a place of love, because we're like, oh my God, this is amazing for me. I just want everyone to experience it. But if they're not into it, it's like you're just going to push them away. So think about how you can embody the lifestyle that you believe in more. And this is actually going to be more inspiring to the people around you. And you'll probably find they inquire, whether it's months or years down the track. They might ask, oh, you seem really happy in yourself. Like, what have you been doing? Or I noticed that you really enjoy yoga. I've been thinking about it more. And that might be more in their timing down the track. And that is the moment when they come to you, that is the time to offer your thoughts, and not when they don't want a bar of it. Just put the offer out there, have it on the table, and then leave it. Let them make their own choice. And this will be more empowering for them, because when they come to you down the track, it'll be like they've chosen that choice, and that'll be coming from them. Is that landing? We can only help people who want to be helped. Everyone's on their own journey. And for one person, yoga will be medicine. And for someone else, it will be, their Friday night beers with their friends, or going surfing, or playing their mixed netball on a Sunday night, or going for coffee with a friend, or dancing, or making art. Like, we all have different forms of medicine. So just, really respecting that, and showing them that the opportunity's there and you're open to chatting about it, but not forcing is really important. I don't know how to sugarcoat that, but that's my thoughts on that front. Okay. Next question comes from my beautiful friend Alex, and she said, I'm enjoying creating my boundaries for my me time, but how do I stop feeling guilty about it? And there's also a second question here. She's written, being sensitive equals superpower, but changes to my life equals feeling anxious and self-doubting. How to overcome? I'm actually, babe, going to answer these together because they're interrelated and they're actually both mirroring each other. So, as I was talking about last episode with maybe you're not fucking up, maybe you're collecting data. Whenever we make a change, there is often a transition period. So, say before we make the change, we're in one way of relating, one way of going about our life. And even if this is uncomfortable, we've found a sense of comfort within that because we almost don't have to think about it. It's just, it's just happening. It's playing out. And this way of living will be at a certain level of self-worth. And what happens when we're ready to introduce new habits like boundaries, seeing our sensitivity as a superpower and really aligning our actions with that. These are new habits, and there's a part of us, our ego, that's actually going to try and send us back to our original way of relating because, as I said, even if that's uncomfortable, we have found a sense of comfort in that we are familiar with it, especially if it's a way we've been operating for some time. So I call this the growing pains because it's like we are growing into a new level of self-worth. And this is awakening where we can feel like a toddler again almost because we have to, things that, as I said, we're familiar in the past and we almost autopilot our responses and we got comfortable doing that. Now that we are growing and growing into a new way of relating, we actually have to stop and think each time. We have to go, okay, what choice do I want to make? And this is part of living consciously and living with awareness is having to, stop and think and go, oh, fuck, what is it that I do again? And it's that toddler sense of like, oh, how do I tell someone no? Like, how do I honor my sensitivity? How do I do it again? Because we don't know yet. It's like we're growing into that. And that's what I was saying, like your ego will try and keep you as you were. And this is probably where the anxiety and the self-doubt's coming in because it's like we start questioning, wouldn't it be easier to just stay as I was? Because even though it's not where I want to be, it's comfortable, it's familiar. So unfortunately, I don't have a quick fix here. Growth can be uncomfortable. And the only way out is through, really. The good news is that the light is at the end of the tunnel. It gets easier, and you've probably had glimpses of this where you've gone, I would have felt so guilty in the past, but like I've just kind of let it go much quicker than what I would have in the past. So we do get those glimpses, and that as we continue to commit to our higher self, it's like we build momentum, and we've got to think about it as like building a new muscle. And this is, for anyone listening who's growing into something new in any aspect of their life will relate to this. This is just one example. But whatever we're awakening, whatever we're growing into, these similar themes come up. And I guess it's good to think about when you've made changes in the past that might not have necessarily been in this arena. But reflect on when you have made changes and then it's got easier for you. It can be something as simple as like, when we're in primary school, we might have got really comfortable there, and then all of a sudden we're in high school and it's like everything's changed, everything's different. And it's like we don't want to go back to primary school, but it was easier than high school. And then each day that we go, it kind of gets a bit easier. And like, I'm not saying it's going to be this long for you, but in terms of a high school example, it's like maybe in a couple of years, we're quite comfortable with that again. And then, in 6 years, we're ready to actually go to a whole nother level. So just reflecting on times in the past, in other aspects of your life where you've actually grown. It's like you're shedding a skin, right? So shedding a skin, you've grown into this new sense of self. You've done it before, you can do it again. And recognize that the guilt associated is coming from worthiness. So hold yourself with tenderness and remind yourself that you are worthy of healthy, appropriate boundaries, because the ego and the inner critic's going to keep jumping in and saying, you don't need to go to all this effort. It'd be easier if you stayed as you are, blah, blah, blah. So it's that constant reminding and self-soothing of like, I'm worthy of this. I can do this. And, this is a time to have your own back, but to also recognize that enlisting support is wonderful to cushion your growth. And this could be in many forms. It could be with a psychologist, a counselor, a coach, a mentor, or perhaps, a dear friend. It could be sharing what you're going through with that trusted friend, someone that really wants to see your growth, so will encourage you to stay with it, and someone you can reach out to when you're like, oh, this is really testing me right now, but I want to stay with it. Someone that can back you in that. And maybe have another listen to my previous episode that maybe you're not fucking up, maybe you're collecting data, because change doesn't happen overnight. And just continue being gentle with yourself as you traverse this new ground. And on that topic of collecting data, remember that sometimes at the start it feels as though we are really growing into these new habits, and it's like we're trying them on for size, like a carbon copy. It takes time and practice. So being in the arena, practicing boundaries, for example, to then be able to reflect. So it's only in the arena when we're, putting ourselves out there, putting ourselves on the line, trying it, are we then able to reflect on that data, right? And go, okay, that worked, that didn't. And sometimes we go, you know what, that just didn't feel like me. And then we had that data because in the future we're like, actually, this is how I do it next time to make it feel more authentic to me. So just this little note here about understanding that with time, you'll really find your groove with it and your confidence. And sometimes at the start, it feels like it's almost like, oh, someone said that boundaries are good, so I might just practice them for a while, but like not really knowing yet how. It's like that toddler stage again. What I'm saying is not really knowing how they fit in with our voice and with our life. And then over time, with that reflection and that data, going, okay, this is how it feels good for me, and you find your groove with it more so. But keep going, doing awesome. Okay, our next question from one of my beautiful yoga students, actually, the lovely Brooke. What was or is even still a limiting belief of yours? Far out, this is such a good question. I had to think a bit about this and think about what's really been present for me this year in general is how I've answered this question. And that's this feeling, I think I mentioned it on the episode of the undeniable power of all in. So a limiting belief for me has been this feeling that someone is going to tap me on the shoulder and say, go back to your real job or real life now. And this has been with me probably for the past couple of years, but really got louder at the start of this year when I went full time in my biz. And, this belief or this thought, it really comes from fear, as in it can't be this good, like life can't be this good. And that, comes from my inner critic or my ego. And so I'm reminding myself every day that I'm worthy of doing work that I love, having ample time to fill up my own cup and to really enjoy my life. So it's still a work in progress, but yeah, that would be one for me. Okay, this next question comes from my beautiful friend Jules. So she's written, sovereignty, full stop. The eternal struggle, full stop. Tips for this, please. For example, staying in the magic when so much of life conspires to knock it out of us. Okay, there's a few things I want to bring in here. So every day we experience yin and yang, light and dark. That is of my belief that this is present in every day. This is a universal law that has existed much longer than the time that we have been on the planet. And I believe we experience a lot of pain and struggle when we resist the natural experience of one, because both exist and both need to exist in our world, in our experience here on Earth. Maybe not in other dimensions, but definitely here we see both yin and yang present. So from there's some inquiry. Are you aiming for 24/7 sovereignty or 24/7 magic? Is there a mountaintop that you are waiting to reach that might be tripping you up? And further, are you classifying the magic as only the light? And do you believe that? So these are just some questions to sit with. And I think we trip up on thinking that, when we get to some place, nothing will bother us. And each new evolution has new contrasts. This is kind of what I was talking about with Alex's question. Speaking to, evolution and awakening, there's always going to be a new awakening to go through. So think about where you were a year ago and what contrast you experienced. When I'm speaking about contrast, I'm speaking about light and dark, the contrast, the polarity. And now that you are at a new level, a year on, there are new contrasts presenting themselves. You don't have the same problems maybe as a year ago. There's different ones, but it still exists, this light and dark. So I think sometimes we trip up going, when I make it, I won't experience any dark. But there's actually nowhere to make, because we're always going to be experiencing both here on Earth, I think anyway. We can really build confidence to know that both exist, and we can build toolkits. So it can certainly not get easier, but we can feel more at ease. I don't know how to word that, but I think that's wisdom maybe that comes through with life experience and looking back and going, you know what, there's always been light and dark in my life, and there always will be. And I think all of this, what both the light and the dark can show us, is a deepening of our faith and our trust that everything is always working out for us and that the universe has not forgotten us, even when things get really dark or when things get really light, and anywhere within that spectrum, that the universe is always sending us the situations for our, the situations, the people, the circumstances for our higher self, for our growth in this lifetime. So we really can't rush our healing. It's important to acknowledge the steps and the progress that we make every single day, which, as I said, may be different. We may be operating very differently to even how we operated a year ago. And that's a little winky face to Jules because we met about a year ago. So I know and I have seen your growth in that time. And what I sent your way, Jules, but I might just mention on the podcast here for those who have resonated with this question, is Abraham Hicks, because it really speaks to contrast beautifully. So for those who are listening and resonating, I'll recommend a YouTube. It's an audio, and it's called The Morning Rampage to Set Your Day for Magic. I'll put it in the show notes, but try giving that a listen because, yeah, as I said, they just speak to contrast so beautifully, so succinctly. And yeah, all the best. Keep showing up, gal. Awesome work. Okay, next question. This is from Elizabeth. And she's asked, how do you deal with little comments or judgment about the work you're doing, opposed to what some may perceive as a, inverted commas, real job, such as 9-to-5 shifts or working for an organisation, etc.? P.S. I think the work you do is amazing. Thanks, beautiful. I love this question. And to be honest, it's really water off a duck's back for me now. That hasn't always been that way. So especially in the start, when I first created my business, Inner Shine, in 2014, and I was very vulnerable about it. I took everything to heart that anyone said about my business or what I was creating, what I was putting out there. I was nervous to post on, it was mainly Facebook back then, a little bit of Insta. I was nervous for how people were going to take it. And yeah, one example here is when I think I might have told you guys this story before, when I was at a family gathering. I literally just had my first Inner Shine workshop. And my uncle came straight up to me and said, oh, so I heard you are doing this business thing. Like, is it going to make any money? And I was just so taken aback because I'd received mostly support prior to that. And I just said to him, what does it matter to you? I got very defensive. And it took me a bit to sort of, to dust myself off after that. But what I decided was that I was going to use that as fire. So I started visualizing. I was like, one day I'm going to be successful as fuck. And, those people are going to ask me what I'm doing. And, so what do they say? Success is the best revenge. So that sort of, I started thinking about that as fuel and fire. And yeah, I guess when you put your heart into your biz, it can feel quite personal. So for me, this reframe around seeing my business as an entity and that I'm in communication with that entity, that's really helped. And with time, like witnessing the joy and alignment that has come from me following this, you really get the sense that other people's perceptions are their stuff and actually have nothing to do with you. And there's a lot of inner work here, because not following the norm, in inverted commas, it can be quite challenging, and it brings up a lot of stuff. There's a great affirmation from Louise Hay. It's really simple, straight to the point. I approve of myself. And this would be something, if this is something that you're personally going through, I would recommend repeating this as many times as you can in a day. And if I ever feel nervous about a social gathering where I know questions are going to be asked, or I'm like, oh, that person's going to be there, they're going to, put me under the chopping block about it, I take time in the car before I go in, like repeating affirmations like that one, placing my hands on my heart, plugging deeply into me and my soul, and, remembering I have nothing to prove to anyone else. And then I'll also, at a gathering as such, I might use like a toilet break as time to reconnect with myself. And afterwards as well, that time in reflection is really important, especially if you're sensitive or empathic, because we need to be recognizing, okay, what's my stuff here? Like, what's my insecurities? And holding that with love, because it's just like this muscle, we're building that confidence. So what do I need to work on in my part? What are my wounds? What are my triggers? And then what is just someone else sending their insecurities or negative beliefs or their power trip my way? So that whether it's meditation or journaling, whatever your reflective practice is, if you're being triggered, going, okay, what's mine? What's theirs? Is this mine? Is this theirs? And being able to decipher that and using that common sense with it. Other thing here is that surrounding yourself with positive, supportive people is so important too. People who believe in you are backing you. This is not possible 100% of the time, which is why I've spoken what I have to previously, but we can also choose who we spend the majority of our time with. So spend more time with those people that are in your corner. It sounds really simple, but it is a game changer, because they're going to want to see the best in you and the best in your business, and they're going to be there for you in the ups and the downs. Last point here, not everyone deserves access to you. So people earn your trust. Choose who you share your dreams and ideas with. It's like a delicate flower, especially in the beginning. It's like this little seedling. And so you might spend more time where it's just you and that seedling communicating. And then when you're ready to, inviting someone who you really trust and going, hey, this is an idea I have. You don't have to prove yourself and tell that person who you know is going to rip the seedling out of the ground and throw it away. Wait until it gathers momentum and, water it with love from you and from the people who support you. And just allow it to grow in its own time, because it is really delicate, especially in the beginning. Whew, I think that's all the questions. I think there was only like 6 or 7, but I really have jumped right into them. So I hope that was super helpful for those of you who asked. And for those of you who are listening in, I'm sure at least one of them was maybe a question of yours, and I hope you really got a lot out of it. I want to mention here before we wrap up that if you are looking to dive deeper into any of these areas, that one-on-one mentoring with me might be for you. And I've just set up, I'm really proud of this, I've set up that you can book free discovery calls through my website. So at www.amandahill.com.au, if you head to the one-on-one mentoring page, there's a spot that says book free discovery call, and you can just find a time that works for you and book a time to chat, because these discovery calls are free, no obligation. You can just get a feel for what it might be like to work together, and I would just love to meet you and support you on your journey. Just lastly, I do work with sensitive, empathic, and intuitive souls, and the main areas I work on is in becoming more confident in who you are and owning your personal flavor, thriving within your unique sensitivity, establishing healthy, appropriate boundaries. I also work with people in deepening their femininity, sensuality, and relationship to the divine, accessing the freedom that comes from living a life aligned with truth, and also coming into deep communion with your intuition and allowing it to lead the way in all aspects of life. So I find that for most people, we're really in particular working on 2 or 3 of those areas, but all of them kind of weave through as well. So I'd love to hear from you if that resonates. Head to my website. I'll put it in the show notes. But I hope you loved this ep, and have a beautiful rest of your day or evening, and we'll see you next time.